thank you for joining us. My name is Nelson Rascone. I am the executive director of Dad's Move. We are a father-driven family support organization in Washington State. And we support fathers that are raising children with behavioral health disorders. We provide trainings, outreach. We do 2 parent weekends a year. We did our first Father's Camp Out this year. And we are hopefully working on starting some new trainings coming next year to try and get more fathers in the workforce to work as advocates. So that's kind of a nutshell of our history. A little bit about myself. I have 3 grown children that all have developmental or mental health disorders. I have 1 child that lives in a group home in the eastern side of our state in Spokane. He will not ever be able to live on his own. He is operates probably at about a 7-year-old level. I have a 29-year-old who functions at about a 12-year-old level. She is able to work, but has to live in another house with other people to help support her. And then my youngest actually works in construction as a cement mason, lives on his own, and is pretty functioning. My youngest is the one that got me into this. He is biologically mine. Out of the 3, we have a blended family. I got custody of him when he was 3 years old, when him and his I can't speak today. His mom and I separated, and his mother has some significant mental health challenges, which was one of the leading reasons I got custody of him. It was a big struggle early on to get him help. There was a lot of problems, a lot of blowouts, a lot of sorry, my computer is doing something weird. Just 1 second. There we go. But it was a struggle early on. I actually lost a job driving for the bus system in Seattle after having to go back to the school, sometimes several times a day, and pick him up from getting outbursts, stabbing the teacher. I mean, I really struggled early on until we found help. And then when I met my second wife, I had her children that I had to help care for because their father was not in the picture. So today, they're all grown. Just as a reminder, could I get everyone to mute themselves that are not? Thank you. So that's kind of a snapshot about myself. I'm going to introduce you to our 3 panelists today and let them share a little bit about themselves. Robert Hartle, Paul Brown, and John Botkins. And I will go ahead and let John start with his story. And then what we're going to do is, once they have introduced themselves, I'm going to ask them a series of questions about their experience as a father and navigating our system. And then after we're done with that, we will open it up to questions from the audience. So, John, I will go ahead and let you start with sharing a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's John Bodkins. I live in a rural community about 27 miles north of Omak, Washington. I live up in the eastern slopes of the Northern Cascade Mountain Range. We lack all kinds of services here in our community. So I've been working to try and help get services in our rural community. We're about 3 hours from anywhere to get services. I have two adult children, 31 and 32, one with autistic issues, and then the other with behavioral issues. They both live on the East Coast. They're both functional in the community. One's in Pennsylvania, one's in Maryland. I pretty much think that's about it for now. I've been in the field for about 30 years. My mother was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder back in 76. So and I worked for CPS for about 8 years in Child Protective Services. And I've been with, since the beginning of Dad's Move, I've been here 10 years. So I will pass it on to Paul.
Thank you, John.
Hi, I'm Paul Brown. I have been with Dad's Move going on 8 years. So I have, between my wife and I, we have 8 children. Out of the 8, we have 4 that have some kind of mental health issues, behavioral issues, and disabilities of some sort. I found Dad's Move and through actually a counselor, because I was looking for other support systems for me and I didn't know who else to turn to. So my oldest, she is just turning 20. She functions probably about the mentality and comprehension about 12. My other children suffer from have anxiety issues, mental health disorders, or behavioral health issues. So out here in Spokane, I try and advocate and work with others to be able to make better connections for us. And
Thank you, Paul.
Pass that on to Robert.
Hey there, guys. My name's Robert Hartle. I live here in Tacoma, Washington. I've been working in the Tacoma School District for 25 years, all in special ed. I've worked several different programs, and I've worked all levels. I have one son with a behavior disorder that has yet to be, I would say, fully diagnosed, but we do know that there's something going on, and we're still struggling with it. But I've been, let's see, Dad's Move. I found them on I was just online looking for something to do, about fathers, and I found the group, and I've been with them now, about 6 years, Nelson?
Yes.
But yeah, so it's really been a good time. Been able to learn a lot, and I think that our presentation will show you that we are all in the same boat, and we're here to help in whatever we can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and ask the panelists a series of questions talking about their experience as a father, raising a child with behavioral disorders and having to access the system from a father's point of view. Because as we can all attest, many of us some of us have been single fathers, our experience getting services has been vastly different than what a mom would experience. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Paul, the first question. So as you think back on how you were raised and what expectations you bought into becoming a father, how has parenting a child with a mental health disorder challenged your narrative about what it means to be a good father? And then as a follow-up to that, how have you coped with this, and has your family accepted and or supported you in this adaptive role?
Well, so for me, it's been a huge challenge to adapt that I couldn't fix my child when it comes to the mental health issues and how they struggle with it. Just because I grew up in a family that most everything we just didn't discuss any of those issues. It was just, you kept it to yourself. You don't talk about it. You don't deal with it. You just move on. But with broadening, understanding my own issues, I had to learn to listen and pay attention to my child's behaviors or emotions or body language of what was going on. And as I did that, my family actually started to embrace more and having understanding that we cannot deal with it the way that we did, because it's not going to work out for us, and we will actually have more meltdowns, more meltdowns, because we're not paying close enough attention.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to go to you, John, and I'm going to ask you the same question. As you think back on how you were raised and what expectations you bought into becoming a father, how has parenting a child with mental health issues challenged your narrative about what it means to be a good father? And how have you coped with this? And has your family accepted and or supported this new role?
Let me unmute myself. Just trying to remember most of the question, but there's a lot of questions altogether. I was abused real bad in my family when I was younger, and growing up, I come to the realization that somebody needed to break this chain. And so I was trying to break the chain, and then tried to get services for my son, and found out that there was an issue with the system, that the system not always was helpful. And then there were some services that I didn't even realize were available. So the whole issue was me breaking that chain of abuse in my family. And then later on down the road, my whole family ended up hating me for what I've done, including my children did not have anything to want to do with me for a long time. So, yeah. So I hope it answered some of the questions you had.
Yes, yes, you did. Thank you. And I'd like to actually take a stab at this because of my situation. My father was not around. He comes from a Hispanic background. He immigrated here from Cuba. And very much as I was growing up when I was little, when he was there, my mother did everything. He very much had the quote unquote traditional father role of years ago, where he worked, he came home and might play or engage with us, but all the child rearing was done by my mother. And then, fast forward to when I became a child, or when I had a child, there was a lot of challenges from him because I sought to be a different father. I took a very active role when he was born. I took care of him. I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning when he'd cry. I changed his diaper. And then when the separation came, I chose to fight for custody. And my father actually questioned me on this, that's the mom's job. That's not my job, and thought I was crazy. And then years later, after he saw how I did and some of the challenges I dealt with my son, he understood and took a different opinion to my fathering, but he very much questioned it at first. And I remember having a lot of conversations about it because I went down a completely different path than him. So Robert, I'll ask you the same question. Do you need me to repeat it for you?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
I was brought up in the son of a policeman, and so it got real interesting around the house. I also was raised up in the church, and for a while it was, you do what your parents tell you, it was kind of odd. I wanted to be a dad I don't know. I just wanted to be a dad. When I got out of high school, I started thinking, okay, what's it going to be like? And I started forming my own philosophy. I went from one church to a different church, I kind of stepped out on my own. And then when I got married and I had Ethan, all this prep work I've been trying, well, that got thrown out on its ear. But I told myself, this is my son, and regardless of what's happening, I'm going to be an active dad. So my wife worked nights, I worked days, so seemed like the perfect combination. We always had a parent at our house. So I was active with my son. And then we kind of noticed a few things, and it's just been kind of an ongoing pursuit from there. Would I change it? No. I actually enjoy being a dad, and I hope that helps.
Thank you, Robert. So I'm going to come back to you, Paul, for our next question.
Okay.
What was the most unexpected issue or challenge you have had to deal with that you did not feel prepared for as a father or parent?
Oh man. I would say it was having to learn to advocate for my oldest at school, and getting her the right services that she needed, and not just letting the school say, well, she doesn't need this or she doesn't need that. Going through a lot of painstaking, requiring them to get testing done for her learning abilities outside of the school district, because they kept on saying she doesn't need anything. And so I would say I was not prepared for that. I had nobody to rely on to help me do it. I just kind of had to stumble and fall.
Do you feel at all that those systems treated you differently as a father advocating for those services?
Oh, definitely. I do. I feel very much that way, that I was, at times I felt ignored.
ignored so that they didn't.
Do you have to deal with me?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Denitra, I do see your question there. It's so it says, how do you use your voice in the move for dads to make the move grow? So the way I do it, in particular, is I do a lot of community. I try and get out to as many community activities I can to get other dads and families to see that it's very important for dads and father figures to be involved with this and move towards more of having more male peer-to-peer.
Yes. And I will just say a lot of what we do is having some very honest, hard conversations with many fathers over the last 10 years about what it means to be a father and trying to break that mold of what society has said our job is or our role is, or what it means to be a male, how we're supposed to react, how we're not supposed to react. A lot of it is stigma busting about what it means to be a father. And that's probably a lot of the work we've had to do over the years and probably will always continue to do so. So John, same question. What was the most unexpected issue or challenge you have had to deal with that you did not feel prepared for?
Well, like Paul, it was the advocating problem issue, but also it was not knowing what services were available for men and their children. So that was a big issue because there was actually no place out there to find services for men, 30 years ago. So it's really been, since I moved to rural Washington, it's even been more of an issue because there are no services here. So I was better off living near or in the city or in the suburbs to get services. So services is really a big issue, and the money to fund them, and like Paul was saying, to advocate, know who to advocate to help get the services for my kids was another big issue. So advocating, I had to learn it.
And
so
thank you, John. I think a lot of us can agree with that experience. Robert, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit and throw a different question at you. We have all agreed that along with joys we experience, there are definitely losses and grief we experience in raising our children with their unique needs. How has this sense of grief and loss impacted your role as a father and your success as a parent to your child?
Well, when it comes to experiencing loss, and with my family, one of the things was the loss of a grandma, and Ethan was really attached to grandma, and so when Grandma Rachel passed, having a child like that, where their sudden person they can go to or do something with is gone, and unexpectedly as well, causes them to implode. So at first it was really, really hard. He went downhill for a little while. Eventually, as he's gotten older, it's gotten better. We can kick back and talk and, you know, kind of joke around about Grandma Rachel and stuff. But, you know, when you lose somebody, it's one thing. But when you got someone like I have with Ethan and other parents that have had a special needs child that really get this attachment to somebody, and that attachment is gone, it can really be hard. I think that's the biggest thing that I've had to face is like love, you know, now that some of the older relatives are now dying and or moving away, you know, it's like, how do you move on? And just one word, adapt. You know, it's easier said than done, but that's what I've had to learn to do. I've had to learn to adapt and find new sources.
Thank you, Robert. I think we can all agree on that. We've had to do a lot of adapting. So I just want to take a moment to address some of the questions in the chat. So we'll talk about suggestions of how, you know, how to bring cultural and language barriers, you know, to motivate fathers to be more involved at the end, because we have a lot of tips on that. But I also wanted to address real quick the other one. At the start, we mentioned it being harder for a father to find help and resources. And where do we think this inequity comes from, and how can we promote the importance of fathers? We're doing it right now, and I'll let my teammates jump in on this, but I'll speak from my own experience, especially having been a single father. A lot of it comes from a complexity of issues. Part of it is our own fault as fathers for not being there for so long. The other part of it is our system. But we got to a point where we had a family support system built around moms being the primary caregiver. So whether we were talking about family counseling, school, wraparound services, mental health counseling, these systems got all too used to mom being the primary point person, which unfortunately is still the case. So naturally, a lot of these supports were kind of built around that. And it became little things. You would go to a counseling office and most of your literature was geared towards moms. Everything started being geared towards moms. Best example is WIC, women, infant, children. People often don't realize fathers can use that service. I did. I accessed WIC as uncomfortable as it was to go there. And as much as people looked at me like I was an alien when I went in there, I did it because my son needed the support, and I was pretty low income at the time and I qualified. So I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Where I think we can change is to just little things. Start making things a little bit more father friendly. Start approaching things from the standpoint that both moms and dads are important, and we need both moms and dads involved. This is not an anti-mom thing. And we're really quick to tell that to guys. We're not here to bash moms. We are both important. And that's what we need to remember when these places are serving our families. We have to make things open to all and make it feel comfortable for men to get involved. And it starts with the little things, like making things a little bit more flexible, because just the nature of a lot of guys' work, it makes it hard to get into those appointments. On the flip side, groups like us, advocates like many of you that are on this call, need to continue to promote fathers that they need to step up and be more involved. So I think it's gonna take more time, but it's little things where we start. Did the three of you want to add to that question?
I know as far as my end, it was, for me, it was reversed where I had to, and I was a single parent for a long time with my oldest, that I had to push like my my daughter's mom when she was around to come to those appointments to assist. So it was a very different perspective for me, because here they are looking at, oh, it should be that it was mom that needs to that is initiating this, but I had initiated. So I had the experience where it was reversed. I had to get her involved in her care, but they were still trying to always ask, well, where's mom? Where's mom? And to get them to understand that sometimes the other parent was not willing to assist with the care, and still felt like a lot of times it was directed away from it.
Thank you. Robert or John, did either of you want to address this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that working or being involved with the justice system and stuff, that it still needs to be changed amongst the family justice, that men need to be involved. There have been several times when I was trying to get services in the system to where, because I was a male, I didn't get them services for the simple reason that I wasn't female. No offense against the women population, but and I had to think before I spoke, because it just made me angry that just because I was a male, I couldn't get the same services as a female for my child working as a family advocate. So it was just like totally frustrating. And there were several times in the court systems and stuff where I almost said, I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a skirt. If I was wearing a skirt, I'd get the same services. But since that's not happening, I just bit my tongue because I knew it wasn't going to happen. But we have to change that and watch for that kind of stuff going on in our communities and society.
Thank you, John. Robert, I saw that you had a comment to address on that.
Well, in my situation, I want to advocate for my son, but when I work in the school district that he's going, I said, I was thinking to myself, how far can I go as an advocate for my kid without it affecting my reputation or my job in the district? It's like, how do I walk that path there without, because I actually had to take the school district to mediation because of a situation that was going on with my son. And, and I'm thinking to myself, now what do the rest of the people think? And I was a rare thing to see at an IEP meeting. There were not many fathers at all when I was working in some of the IEP meetings. There'd be males there, but they were attorneys and, the assistant principal maybe, but never a dad, And so to see a dad at an IEP meeting was rare.
That's great to hear.
I think we just, we just need to say, hey, look at us. Times have changed. So is the role of the dad. We have got to get involved. And we've got to let and tell the government, offices, look, we're here and we need help, so.
Agreed. I think, as us guys we need to speak up more. This kind of goes into the next question I'm going to throw at all of you. So I'll start with you, John. While raising your child with mental health challenges, you had to participate in many meetings and sessions with professionals in schools, mental health offices, etc. Many of us on this panel have shared that we experience being taken less seriously as a father by the professionals than how the mothers are generally treated in these situations. Has this been your experience, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that last question, but it's been frustrating for the simple reason that it's built around moms and there's not many dad supports. So we need to mentor dads in helping get those supports out there to help dads and fathers across the country or even in the world to now advocate for themselves. What was the last part of that question?
So how did you handle situations where you felt treated differently by professionals?
Like I was saying, I was handled with frustration. And sorry about the phone, but yeah, I was totally frustrated and I just didn't know where to turn. And at times still today, even though with advocating, I still run into that same frustration.
Thank you, John.
So, all right.
Paul, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I actually have it in front of me.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So the challenges I faced, especially when it came to mental health for my daughter, my oldest, was trying to get into those services. And I found when I first started was go to the appointment to get her set up with a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever it was. I always got the question asked, well, where's mom? How come mom isn't here? And having to have the discussion with them, well, that due to circumstances, mom is not in the picture, and still get asked the same question, well, where's mom? Is mom coming today? And it took me kind of being better lack of words. I at one point I would say I probably lost my temper and had to tell him, I am all she has, there is nobody else. And I went through 4 counselors for my daughter. Finally, when we got one that understood that she needed to help find services to assist my daughter and I. So it took 4 counselors to understand this.
Very frustrating. Thank you, Paul. I'd like to address this real quick. When I was my youngest, my biological son, he had some significant challenges with his behavior when he was younger. So we were involved with counselors. He was on an IEP from pretty much preschool on. We got wraparound services, and just like the other panelists were saying, what I was always approached with was, well, where's mom? At one time, the agency we received wraparound support from actually made me show them the court paperwork that I had custody of him before they would proceed forward. Again, I'm not trying to bash, but it's this kind of little things that I think we need to change. Because I know on the flip side, if it was mom coming in, they would not ask, where is dad? Because we have unfortunately come to expect that, oh, dad is not there, mom takes care of it. It's become normal. And that's our problem. This has become normal. It's kind of like when, for a brief time there, when I first got together with my now second wife, I actually stayed at home. I was a stay-at-home father for all three of our combined children as I went to school. So I went to all the IEP meetings for all three of them. I was dealing with daycare. I was cooking dinner, and I would either get surprises or kind of attaboys. Oh, that's good of you to do that. If mom's doing it, society just views it as her job, and she doesn't give any credit for it. We need to stop that. It should be normalized that it's either the father or mom's job or both to do any and all of those things. So we need to normalize that stuff. And I know it sounds weird. We want to thank a father or give them kudos for when they're doing that stuff, but we got to remember it needs to be normalized that that's part of their job as parenting, or part of their job as being in a committed relationship. So just kind of my viewpoint on that. Robert, did you want to address that question?
Oh yeah.
Be nice.
Man. Fine. No, early on we were when Austin and Ethan were about 3 and 4 years old, we were set up to take Ethan down to a psychologist in Puyallup, and we saw them the first time. They said, come back in 3 months and we'll do it again. We go down there, and they didn't bother to tell us that the person we were supposed to see quit the day before. And we're like, okay, so who's going to see my son? Oh, nobody's here. Really, and just started the whole roller coaster of emotions. As Ethan was growing up, there were some teachers that took them serious. There were some that just blew them off. It kind of hit a crescendo for me when he was in high school. He did something that was rather interesting. I talked to the psychologist, and all she said was, well, boys will be boys. And I'm like, no, boys will not be boys when they're doing this. And I asked them what they're going to do. Are they going to hold him accountable? Are they going to? No, they just blew him off. And it has been really frustrating. The best thing that's happened is he's gone to the place here called Willie Stewart, and the teachers and the counselor down there have been able to help out a tremendous amount with me. And so it's just been a roller coaster, and you're going to have to be willing to ride it, and, and it's something, and and one thing I feel, if you feel that somebody is not is not giving your child the services they need, then make some noise. You know, the principal will get involved. The other counselors will start getting involved. You know, and because I'll tell you, it's the quiet parents that get stomped on, and it's the loud ones that everybody's like, oh, okay. So make some noise.
So let me see. What do I want to throw at you guys? I had my question. Just give me a second. I lost it. So I will start with you, Rob, or John. Children and youth with mental health illness face a higher than usual risk of becoming involved with the court systems, either through child welfare getting involved, or juvenile justice, or even because they became easy targets and victims of crime. If you have ever had to deal with the court system with your child, can you share a little bit about that experience and what you learned from it?
John, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
That was for John. Yes, I have. Sorry, I was on mute. I was talking and it was muted. But anyway, yes, I had went through the court system, and it was geared through mom, apart from the fathers, and then it was trying to remember the rest of the question now.
I can repeat it.
Can you repeat it?
Yes, sir. Children and youth with mental illness face a higher than usual risk of becoming involved with court systems, either through child welfare, getting involved, or juvenile justice, or even because they became easy targets and victims of crime. If you have ever dealt with the court system with your child, can you share a little bit about what that experience was and what you learned from it?
Well, like I was saying, it's they need to gear this more towards fathers too, and not just mothers, but that's the way our society has become. Through working with CPS and stuff through the courts, I've learned that a lot of dads are really done wrong by the moms, where the moms want to use their children as pawns. And it's just, the whole thing becomes frustrating. We just need to get better services, better supports for dad, and trainings and stuff and programs geared towards both mom and dad to work together.
Thank you, John. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and ask you, Paul, could you please describe a positive or helpful experience you or other family members have had while receiving mental health services? And then please describe a negative or unhelpful experience you or other family members have had in receiving services.
I would say the biggest positive experience I had with the mental health services was once got my daughter into counseling. Her counselor looked at me and said, "We need to get you into some kind of services because of everything that you deal with. You have to have a safe space to talk to somebody. And because there's no way you can continue this way without having that safe space to be able to work through the stress, the issues that you have with dealing with this on your own." And it was actually the nicest thing anybody had done was not just looking out for my daughter, but also looking out for me and realizing that I needed to be given that help too. And so they advocated for me to get some help and pressed their supervisors to get me into services for on my own.
And has that been a big benefit to you as a father, or has that helped you in your parenting?
Oh, definitely. Because with with my background of being former military and a combat vet, how for a long time it's always just been told to those of us that are former military or combat vets or military that we don't talk about what we deal with, what we feel, nothing. And I will tell you, before I started getting that help and being told that constantly, I fell short as a parent because I started expecting my child to do the same thing. And so it actually has benefited to have somebody do that so that I could see that it is important for both, for everybody involved to have those mental health services.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Paul. So, Robert, I'm going to throw the same question to you. Can you please describe a positive or helpful experience you or your other family members have had in receiving mental health services, and then also please describe any negative or unhelpful experience you or your other family members have had.
Well, it's kind of funny. The positive and the negative come from the same building. I had a teacher at Foss High School that was a big help with my son Ethan. Where some teachers in the past would just take his behavior and think, haha, it was just, cute. She held him to the fire and made him, be accountable. And it helped, for that time that he was there, he still would try to do things, and but she really held him and helped me out to hold him to the fire there to behave. The unpleasant time came from the same building, from their school psychologist, who wouldn't take him or his actions seriously, which really frustrated me. I can say in short, I completely lost it on the phone. And I think I probably lectured her for about 10 minutes. And there were, not too many friendly things were exchanged. And it really made me upset that a professional like that, when a father would ask for help, they would just brush you off. I didn't know what to do, but I can say that being in this group has also helped, because now I have a way to connect with other people that are in the same situation. They've got kids with different needs that have had good and bad experiences, and we can all get together as a group and learn how to make it all better.
Thank you, Robert. John, I'll start with you with the next question. Was there ever a point when you felt hopeless, or that you felt that others in your community, like teachers, law enforcement, or other community supports, had given up on you or your child? If yes, what were the most helpful factors that helped you not to give up?
basically keeping the faith and trying to keep myself together and not wind up in a worse situation than I was already in, which is pretty much easy to do when you're working with the system and your emotions and stuff get the better of you, where maybe you get angry about what's going on and then you're in more trouble than you want to be.
Thank you. Paul, same question. And do you need me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Was there ever a point when you felt helpless, or that you felt that others in your community, such as teachers, law enforcement, or other supports, had given up on you or your child? And then if so, what were the most helpful factors that helped you not to give up?
I would say at the beginning of trying to advocate for her and find these services, just always being told, well, there's nothing that we can do to help you. There's no services for you. Because there's a points when I needed respite care for my daughter, and being told, well, we don't have that available to you, or being told, well, your situation doesn't warrant you needing respite care for some time. So in that situation, it took me going to my own personal mental health professional, my own and my daughter's mental health professional, telling them, look, here's the situation where we're at. I'm being told no, and the only way is somebody else has to say, hey, they do need this type of thing to happen, just for a little bit of a break, so to prevent anything from happening. So it was have to be more self-advocating and saying, I can't accept this, and rallying my friends around me, my family around me, getting them to help find me resources that I didn't know about.
Thank you, Paul. And then lastly, Robert, could you please describe a positive or helpful experience you or your family members had while receiving mental health services? And then please describe negative or unhelpful experiences you or your members had.
Well, I can say this, trying to get mental health services for my son has been awful hard. With me trying to describe things to the original pediatrician, he couldn't really believe what I was saying. It took another doctor to actually see it, to where we finally said, oh, okay, here's what needs to be done. It's been a journey trying to get services. I guess I can say the best thing is that I can say, thank God I work in the district I do, because I have the access to all the services I could ever dream of at times, if I know how to properly go through the channels. There are districts around us that send their kids to us. At the school I work at, I see kids from Franklin Pierce, Clover Park, Olympia, which is half an hour away, different county, and they're sending their deaf students to us because they don't have services, and so for me to help my son, I'm in a great spot. I just have to learn how to properly figure out what I need. And so, but I guess you could say the negative side was my original pediatrician not believing what I was saying about Ethan. And then, but the positive has been my present doctor and the people that have helped me at the schools. So.
Thank you, Robert. I am going to pose a couple more questions for our panelists and then open it up for questions and dialogue. So I'm going to ask this of all of you, and I'll start with Paul. Are there any specific supports that you need as a father, and what is your best advice on how fathers can get support they need?
Oh, wow. So I know over the last almost 20 years, it's changed a lot. Because I would say the biggest supports that I can see that I still feel as a father that need is being more, when we go to receive support, that we still need to have it changed, that the bias, and it's nothing against our female counterparts, but that bias that these supports, in order to get them, you have to be female, or extremely low income. And with that, it's that fine line of, because they don't, the other thing I found is more peer support for dads in that situation, fathers, male caregivers going on with these situations, somebody they can relate to. Because over the years that had never been offered to me through our current system.
Thank you, Paul. John, same question. Are there any specific supports you need as a father, and what is your best advice on how fathers can get the support they need?
Yes, I need the supports of friends, family, our group, Dad's Move. And what was the last part of the question?
What is your best advice on how fathers can get the support they need?
Is to look around in your community, look for support groups, ask around. I mean, even ask some of the 12-step groups or Alcoholics Anonymous if they heard any dad's groups in the area. The same with the DSHS or DCYF now. Yeah, try to get involved with, volunteering and helping others to support dads.
Thank you, John. And lastly, Robert, are there any specific supports you need as a father, and what is your best advice on how fathers can get the support they need?
Well, I think one thing that needs to happen for a dad, along with the support, is you got to take care of yourself. My blood pressure last year was at an all-time high, and I'll tell you, it was 233 over 118. I really needed to find something. Along with the support groups, you need to create hobbies. You need to take time for yourself. No matter how, you could have this family and they love you, they do all this, then there's nights where they're incredible stressors. Every once in a while you got to do something. And for me, my new hobby is that I want to start is photography. I want to be able to go out and start taking pictures of all the beautiful stuff that's out there. Because in the midst of all this ugliness, there's got to be something beautiful out there.
Thank you, Robert. So I'll actually start with you again. I would like all of you just to kind of take one last minute for any closing thoughts, anything else that you would like to share with our audience.
Don't be afraid to speak out and take care of yourself when you need to.
Great
all
words
there.
of advice. Paul, any last
Actually,
thoughts?
I've been paying attention to the chat of some of the comments that people are making. So I actually wanted to address for Deetra. And so she'd asked, as far as advocacy, is there a preference on the gender of the advocate? So with that, I would say for me, I oftentimes, oddly enough, when I had somebody advocating for me to help me get more services, I found it easier for me to have it a female, because they could help. I found they were able to put it in a different perspective when I was working with somebody else, as to where I had a tendency to be very blunt. They could put it in a very delicate way and put it a little nicer than I would.
That's a great point, Paul. I will actually throw in there that often I actually was a little more comfortable a lot of times when I was getting supports to work with females. So it does show you we can't assume anything. So John, 1 minute. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with everyone?
Yes, basically is don't ever give up. Always have faith and just keep searching for the answers until you get what you need to get accomplished. Just never give up.
That's great.
You give up on yourself.
Thank you all. This has been good. So I'm going to throw it out in the last part of our presentation for some open dialogue. I'll go through the chat and see if we haven't addressed something, but if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask any questions or make any comments, feel free to do so.
Nelson, this is Danita Mercier. I'm actually the state parent rep for Kentucky, so I represent every family in this state, and my alternate happens to be my husband. So I just Googled Dad's Move, and I noticed that you're based right there in Washington State. How have you all tried to take Dad's Move as a bigger movement across the state?
That's interesting. We've gotten this question a lot. Honestly, since the beginning of this organization, and John and I are two of the original founders, it was the original vision always for this organization to grow beyond the borders of Washington, because dads need support everywhere. And we actually started getting that opportunity during the pandemic when we all had to switch to virtual. We were having people join us from all across the country, and we even had a couple of trainings and meetings where we had people from other countries join us. So we're actually working on that with some of our partners to find the resources and the people power to grow at least some of what we do beyond our state. We're also currently building a training to actually train and deploy fathers as peer supports into our mental health system.
Awesome. My alternate, we're both peer supports as well. So if you don't, okay, I see that John dropped a number in the chat. So is that a number that we can reach out from the state of Kentucky to you all to help get this Avenue of Champions of Dad moving in this direction?
That's John's personal number. I'm gonna drop in our 800 number into the chat here in a second. And then
I'll put in my email too.
I've also put my information in the chat for you too, that you can also, anybody can also reach out to me on this side of the state here in Washington.
Thank you for everything that you do.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for us?
Yes, how you doing? My name-
Excellent.
I'm James Roche. I work for a mental health agency in Washington, D.C., and I think y'all had a pretty good topic here. I'm a peer support worker, and I help men as well as ladies navigate the system of care. And I find that most men that I deal with that have their kids that have mental health issues, they don't know how to navigate the system. So what I do is help provide services and resources as well as therapists and psychiatrists for the men. And as far as with like court and helping with court, because a lot of men, like they said, I heard the men talking about most of the time, they always look at the ladies being the caregivers. But now you have a lot of men that want to take care of their kids and step up to the plate. And I think that y'all are doing an awesome job trying to help these men navigate the system of care.
Thank you, James. First, thank you for the work you do. That's actually goes to the heart of a lot of what we do. Kind of one of the things we envision is that we get to the point where we can support having staff, male fathers that have, they're further along in their journey like us, that can support and advocate those that are going through that system now. But you're right. A lot of it is we get a lot of guys that don't have any clue how to navigate. But the important thing is we are starting to see fathers that are wanting to get involved. We get calls, and it seems to have been more frequent in the last 2 years. Looking for help, looking to learn how they can access those systems or even be a better parent. And I think that's kind of part of the education that we do, is getting people to understand things are changing. Like in our own state, just about 40% of single parents in Washington state are men. That's huge. And there's other states with similar stats. So we all, not just the system, we like bashing on the system, but it's all of us individually. We need to change our narrative and our perspective on what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a mom, a dad, and what our roles are.
Hi, this is Wayne Wilson, facilitator for family resources in Pittsburgh. And when I was a family advocate for Head Start, actually like a few months ago, I started the first fatherhood program at our agency. This to get fathers to be more involved with their preschoolers' lives. And one of the things that I did was I just, educate all my parents about special education, about the rights that they have for their children. A lot of them didn't know what the rights were. And anytime I hear something that didn't sound right, I would provide information for them. And I think just like you were saying, this educating all our families about what their rights are, both fathers and mothers. it gives them more strength and give them more encouragement to want to go out there and advocate for those rights for their children. Because a lot of times in special education, they try to give them the bare minimum, and I try to explain to them, no, you have a right to this. And we even also provide the families with their special education rights. I just think this, when they have the information, they can they have a stronger voice in advocating for their children's needs. I mean, especially with fathers.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think several of us can attest to having been there. Any other comments or questions, or did any other panelists have something you wanted to talk about?
Nelson, this is Karen Martinez. I'm hoping that I don't get myself in trouble by saying this. I am such a huge advocate for dads and bringing dads into our meetings, into our study. And I find myself, I actually am the program director, and I find myself always asking or going into medical records and saying, well, there's a dad present and there's a dad listed. Was the dad invited? Regardless if it's a single dad, if it's an intact home. And I find myself over and over and over, and I think I had wrote earlier that there was one point where our parent information didn't include a second parent. It was just mom, and that was it. And I said, no, this is not right. I wasn't raised by a dad. However, I see the value because I wasn't raised by a dad. I really do see the value in having dads participate. Is there anything else that I can do to be a pioneer in that, as far as always reminding, the staff and reminding my team that it's really super important to keep in mind to include dads in all of what we do as our work?
First off, I mean, absolutely, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I wish I had a silver bullet for this. It's really, we're busting a lot of stigmas, because you got stigma around disabilities, particularly mental health. You have the stigma of how society has viewed fathers. So,
and there's culture as well.
And there's culture. Like I was mentioning earlier, my father immigrated here from Cuba, and he very much was, it's mom's role. I mean, it's very old school method. So there's a lot of things that us advocates in the system are having to, barriers that we have to break down. And so what I would say to you is, keep up what you're doing. Constantly remind people the importance of fathers. I would even have armed with you stats. I would work on making services, more father friendly, whether it be more male oriented activities, male oriented magazines in your audience. Keep doing those little things and reminding people the importance. I also like throwing out stats at people that show how well kids do, particularly when they have both parents involved, but when they have their father involved. It's a huge difference. I can proudly say all three of our kids, they have their disabilities, each one, but two of them have a job and pay taxes into the system and don't receive any services. And they had both a strong father and a strong mom with them there. And I think it's always reminding people the importance of fathers. And it's not easy and it won't be quick, but we just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that for you, Karen. This comes from the perspective of being former military and a combat vet. One of the challenges that I know I faced with trying to get the services was that some of the services, when you have especially veterans that are combat vets, we typically do not deal well with certain situations well. So a lot of the resources or therapies that were available were not always very fitting for us that are like that, to help teach us to work with our children, because there's a mindset that anybody I've found, at least for me, that it is done this way and this way only, and that's it. And finding a way to reach more veteran dads, to incorporate them more and to help them understand how important it is for them to be involved, because the military still teaches very much that if you have a spouse, they're at home with the kids, that's it, you're gone. And so it's that. So
Thank you.
Thank you. As we're wrapping up, any final thoughts from anyone or questions for us? Feel free to reach out to us, check out our website. As I mentioned, we have another presentation tomorrow we'll be doing on a pretty cool project our group is working on that we want to share with everyone. And for those of you on here that are actively working on with fathers, thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep trying to find ways to be more inclusive of fathers and to reach out to them, and always know that there's a lot more fathers these days that would like to get involved, and many of them don't know how to. Many of them were raised by fathers with old school mentality that may have not been the best father. So keep that in mind, that a lot of these guys out here don't even know how to be a father. So those of us advocates, those of us working with them, we kind of have to help them along and show them the way. But I see a very good future, and I think we're all heading in the right direction. Like I said, you know, even in our state, we're seeing more and more father involvement. And one of the things that groups like ours are really trying to do is get more fathers working in the family system, because we believe that's a huge part of it, is having more men in there to give some more male perspective. So any final thoughts from our panelists or anyone else?
All I can say right now is what I said earlier. You can't advocate for your son or your daughter if you're not able to physically do it. Take care of yourself and enjoy it.
I wanted to say one last thing to kind of give perspective to this on something that Wayne just said. He just put in the chat. Young children rarely see men in early school settings. I was one of maybe 5 men working in Head Start program where I worked. The kids love seeing men around. So true. And I'll give a flip perspective on this just to illustrate how important those early years are. When my son was born, due to his biological mother's mental illness herself, she was not there. It actually took her 2 months to hold him after she gave birth to him. And I was the one that did all the feeding, all the diaper changing, and I'm not looking for kudos. But what that did was he missed important growth. He has struggled for a long time, and I'd even say to this day, to a certain degree, on how he relates with women. And the fact is, we see that in many children on they struggle long term on how they relate with men because of fathers not being there. So bottom line is, parents are important. Moms and dads are vital to our children. We got really quiet. Well, I'd like to thank all of you to coming to our presentation, and I encourage you to visit our website. We have a Facebook page and a mailing list if you'd like to keep up on what we're doing. We regularly do trainings, currently still virtual, and lots of other things in the future. So again, thank you very much for everyone who came today. And hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow.